My name is Friedman, Vice President of the Australian Jewish Association, and as usual, you've seen David on your screen, President of the AJA, and Ted Lapkin, our Executive Director, and you will also have seen our guest for tonight, Tehila Friedman, who we will introduce in a moment. The format tonight will be a little different. We're going to start by watching a 10-minute video and then speak with Tehila until about 8:40, at which point we will open up the discussion with a live Q&A session from the audience. So please have some questions ready to go at about 8:40. Don't forget that if you want to ask a question, you need to indicate this to us by clicking on participants and then on the raise hand icon or the green tick, just so that you get our attention. The chat function is available as usual, so feel free to send messages to the audience during the discussion. Now, Tehila Friedman Nachlon has a master's degree in law from Tel Aviv University, and in 2018 joined the Yesh Atid party. Prior to her entry into the Knesset, she was the director of the Kolot Center for Jewish Leadership and a fellow in Shacharit, a think tank devoted to the development of a renewed social covenant within Israel. She's held a variety of senior leadership roles in various organisations, including serving as advisor to Natan Sharansky, directing the Israel office at the Jewish Federation of Central New Jersey, as they say. Tehila is a member of the Orthodox community and has an interest in promoting pluralism and democracy. She currently lives in Jerusalem with her husband and 5 children. Tehila, welcome to Australia and to the Australian Jewish Association.
Thank you. It's a privilege, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Just on her professional life a bit further, Tehila entered the Knesset in June this year as a replacement for Michael Biton, who had resigned his seat after being appointed to the cabinet. And between the election and entering Knesset, she defected to the Israel Resilience Party after Yesh Atid left the Blue and White Alliance. Now, when she ascended to the Knesset speaker's podium for the first time, listeners expected just another ordinary maiden speech by a newly minted politician. And boy, were they wrong. Instead of adhering to tradition and speaking about what brought her to the Knesset and then thanking her family and mentors, Tehila did something different. Over the space of 10 minutes, she not only wowed those present in the Knesset, but her call for compassion, empathy and moderation went viral, resonating throughout the world, and has now been viewed more than 1.5 million times. Before we speak with her, we're going to watch Tehila's maiden speech. It has English subtitles and you won't be disappointed. Take a look.
בשבועות האחרונים, מאז הגעתי לבית הזה, אני לא מפסיקה לחשוב על רבן יוחנן בן זכאי, אחד היהודים החשובים ביותר בהיסטוריה. מי שברגע האחרון הצליח לחלץ את העם היהודי מירושלים של בית המקדש הבוער ליבנה של בית המדרש המחבר ולהמציא אותו מחדש. אני חושבת על המנהיג הזה שחי בתוך ירושלים, בתוך מלחמת אחים נוראה. כשבחוץ עומדים הרומאים ומחכים לרגע הנכון להיכנס ולהחריב הכל. מלחמת אחים שהתחילה בגלל ויכוח על היחס לרומאים, אבל הפכה מהר מאוד למלחמה של זהות, מלחמת הכל בכל. מה שאתה חושב על הרומאים הפך למי שאתה. מה שאת מאמינה שצריך לעשות הפך למי שאת. אם אני לא מסכימה איתכם, אני נגדכם, לגמרי, עד לשפיכות דמים. השנאה שטפה את הכל. בשם השנאה נשלפו סכינים בבית המקדש. בשם השנאה הוצתו מחסני המזון שיכלו להחזיק עיר במצור. בשם השנאה הגיע הרעב, ועם הרעב הגיע הייאוש. רבן יוחנן בן זכאי לא היה מהאום. הוא ותלמידיו היו צד למאבק. הם נלחמו בקנאים ובקנאות. אבל בשלב מסוים הוא בוחר אחרת. הוא מבין שבמלחמת האחים כולם כבר הפסידו. והוא עושה מהלך מפתיע ופונה לאויב המר שלו. זה שלהבנתו אשם בחורבן המתקרב. אבא סיקרא קראו לו, מנהיג הקנאים בירושלים. גם אבא סיקרא כבר יודע שמלחמת האחים יותר מסוכנת מהאויב שבחוץ. אבל האיש הזה שהבעיר את האש מגלה שהוא כבר לא מצליח להשתלט עליה. האנשים שלו לא מקשיבים לו. השנאה שהוא הפיץ הפכה להיות יותר חזקה ממנו. יחד, ראש הקנאים וראש המתונים מצליחים להבריח את רבן יוחנן בן זכאי החוצה מירושלים, לא על מנת להחזיר את הגלגל אחורה, אלא כדי להתחיל משהו חדש, להניח את היסודות ליום שאחרי. לנאומי פתיחה של חברי כנסת חדשים יש כללים. אני אמורה לספר על תחנות בחיי, להודות למי שהביאני עד הלום, ולשתף משהו מהחלומות ומהשאיפות שבשמן ולשמן הגעתי אל הבית הזה. אבל נאום הפתיחה שלי יכול מאוד להיות גם נאום הסיום. והרלוונטיות של החלומות והתוכניות שאיתם באתי מוטלת בספק, בתוך הכאוס הזה של דהרה אל התהום וההרס שבבחירות רביעיות. ולכן אני מוותרת על כללי הטקס, מבקשת סליחה מאבא ואמא שיושבים פה ובאמת הביאוני עד הלום, ומהורי האיש שלי, ומכל השותפות והשותפים הרבים לדרך שאני צריכה להזכיר. אבל אני מבקשת לומר משהו אחר. נדמה לי שהוא גם בשמם. 2000 שנה עברו מרבן יוחנן. חזרנו לירושלים, בנינו מדינה. אבל עכשיו, בתוך משבר אדיר ממדים, אנחנו מוצאים את עצמנו שוב במקום מפחיד. מגפה קטלנית משתוללת בחוץ, ובפנים אותו רצון הרסני לנצח אחד את השני. אותו עיוורון ואיוולת, אותה שנאה ממארת שגורמת לנו להשקיע את מרב האנרגיה במאבק הפנימי. ושוב כמו אז, שורפים את מחסני האמון, מפוררים את מערכות השלטון, מסכנים בחוסר אחריות מטריף דעת את עצם קיום הבית המשותף. בלב ימי הקורונה, בתוך משבר בריאותי, כלכלי וחברתי שלא ידענו כמותו, בתוך משבר משטרי, אחרי 1.5 שנה בשיתוק, ללא תקציב מאושר, בגרעון קשה, במיתון, שוב יש מי שרוצה שנוחז איש בציציות הראש של אחיו, ששוב נשוסה זה בזה, ששוב ניקח כל פצע וצלקת חברתית ונשפשף אותה עד זוב דם, שוב נלעג ונבוז לכאבים של אחרים. 3 פעמים בתוך 1.5 שנה ניסיתם לנצח, לכופף, להכריע, להכניע. חייבים להפסיק את זה. חייבים להפסיק לנסות לנצח. אסור שישראל הראשונה תכריע את ישראל השנייה, אבל אסור גם שישראל השנייה תכריע את ישראל הראשונה. אסור לנצח אחד את השני. אני יהודייה, דתייה, ציונית דתית, לאומית, פמיניסטית, ירושלמית. גדלתי לתוך שפה ומסורת מסוימים. גדלתי לתוך בית, קהילה ומסורת שעיצבו אותי. יש בעולם שלי המון אמת ויופי וטוב, אבל לא כל האמת, לא כל היופי, לא כל הטוב. אני לא רוצה שכולם יהפכו להיות אני. לא רוצה שכולם יאמינו באותם דברים כמוני, כי אני יודעת שגם בקהילות ועולמות אחרים יש אמת ויופי וטוב, ויש לי מה ללמוד מהם. יש לי מה ללמוד מהמסורתיות המזרחית, מיהודי ברית המועצות, מיהודי אתיופיה, מצאצאי החלוצים בהתיישבות העובדת, מהליברלים האינדיבידואליסטים, מהחרדים, מהחרדלים. יש לי מה ללמוד מהערבים, יש לי מה ללמוד מהדרוזים, מהבדואים, יש לי מה ללמוד מיהודי התפוצות. נכון, לחלק מהקבוצות והמגזרים האלה יש עקרונות, ערכים ומעשים שאני מתנגדת אליהם בתוקף. חלקם ממש מאיימים עליי, כאישה, כיהודייה, כציונית, כדתייה. אבל אני זוכרת ויודעת שבכל אחת מהקבוצות, ממש בכל אחת, יש אומנם את מי שרואים את עצמם כדרך היחידה, הנכונה, שתכף כולם יכירו בצדקתה, ירצו להיות כמותה והיא תוביל ותשלוט. אבל יש גם את מי שמבינים שהשונות בינינו אינה זמנית, שנגזר עלינו לחיות יחד ושזה אתגר חיינו. עימם אני מבקשת לכרות ברית של מתונים, עם כל הכוחות, מכל המגזרים, שמבינים את האתגר הזה שנקרא חיים ביחד. להחזיר את הכוח מהקצוות שמטריפים את החיים של כולנו וליצור מרכז משותף. אני מדברת בטון רך, אני יודעת. ואפשר לטעות ולחשוב שגם המסר שלי הוא של מרכז רך ופשרני, אבל זה בדיוק להפך. המרכז שלי הוא מרכז לכתחילה, מרכז קנאי, שלא מוכן להתפשר על המרכזיות שלו, על האחריות שלו לכל תושבי המדינה, על המקום שיש בו לכל מי שרוצה באמת לחיות יחד. ששם גבול לקנאות, ששם גבול לאנוכיות. מרכז שיש לו מסירות נפש על מתינות, על דמוקרטיה, על יהדות שעושה מקום. מרכז שמגן בגופו על כללי משחק שמאפשרים לנו לנהל מחלוקת בלי להתפרק לחתיכות. הרב אברהם יצחק הכהן קוק כתב לפני שנים רבות על 3 כוחות שמתאבקים כעת במחננו, הקודש, האומה והאנושיות. במילים שלנו, הדתיות, הלאומיות וההומניזם. הרב קוק עצמו היה איש שכל כולו קודש, אבל הוא ידע כמה מסוכן הקודש המוחלט, הלאומיות המוחלטת או ההומניזם המוחלט. אף אחד לא צודק לבדו. חברה בריאה היא חברה שיש בה את 3 הכוחות הללו, לא רק כדי שירסנו אחד את השני, אנחנו זקוקים זה לזה. ב6 שבועות שאני בבית הזה, שמעתי אין סוף לעג וארס כלפי קבוצות שלמות בחברה הישראלית. שמעתי את התקווה שהם ייעלמו, ואנחנו נוכל לשלוט ללא מצרים. אני רוצה לספר לכם משהו. הם לא ייעלמו. צאו לכמה בחירות שתרצו. אף אחד לא ייעלם. אם נמשיך לנסות לנצח אחד את השני, מי שינוצח יהיה העתיד של הילדים שלנו. מי שתובס תהיה הערבות ההדדית, החוסן הפנימי, היכולת להמשיך ולקיים את הנס הזה שנקרא מדינת ישראל. אנחנו חיים בתוך נס. אני בת לצנחן ממשחררי ירושלים. האבא של האיש שלי הוא צנחן ממשחררי ירושלים. אני חיה ומגדלת את ידיי בירושלים. היום יום הכי פשוט ובסיסי שלי הוא התגשמות הנבואות הגדולות ביותר של נביאי ישראל. זקנים וזקנות ברחובה של עיר, ילדים וילדות משחקים. מה שעבור סבי וסבתי היה חלום שקשה לדמיין, ומציאות החיים הפשוטה שלי. אבל מעולם לא לקחתי אותה כמובן מאליו. יהודה עמיחי לימד אותנו, מרחוק כל דבר נראה נס, אבל מקרוב גם נס לא נראה כך. אפילו מי שעבר בים סוף בבקיעת הים, ראה רק את הגב המזיע של ההולך לפניו ואת ירחיו הרחבות. אני בעלת נס המכירה בניסה. אני מודה לקדוש ברוך הוא על הזכות לחיות בנס הזה, ובעיקר אני מרגישה אחראית עליו. לשלומי, לשלומו ולשלמותו, כי שלומי קשור בחוט לשלומו. באתי לכאן כדי להיות חלק מההנהגה שמחויבת לקיום הנס שנקרא מדינת ישראל. הנהגה שלא רוצה לנקום על עוולות, לדאוג לאנשי שלומנו או להיות צודקת, אלא רוצה לשקם ולאחות. הנהגה שרוצה לדאוג למי שבחר בה בדיוק כמו למי שלא. שלא לועגת לכאב של מי שהפסיד, שמאמינה באחווה. הנהגה שמטפחת מערכות שלטון מעולות, שפועלת לפיוס ושיקום פנימי. הנהגה שלא רוצה למחוק אף אחד. לא הנהגה של קילרים. אני מחכה ומתפללת להנהגה של הילרים. האמנתי בהכרח של ממשלת אחדות. אני עדיין מאמינה שזו הדרך היחידה להניח את היסודות לשלב הבא בחיי המדינה, להציל אותנו מחורבן, להמציא את עצמנו מחדש. הרבה מחיי המקצועיים והציבוריים הקדשתי לחיבורים שנועדו להביא ליצירת מרכז ישראלי ויהודי חדש. אני מאמינה שהאחריות והחובה שלנו היא לעשות רבן יוחנן בן זכאי, לכרות ברית של מתונים, ליצור מרכז ישראלי חדש שמגדיר את עצמו לפי מה שהוא כן ולא לפי מה שהוא לא. אלה ימי הבית השלישי, ובדיוק כמו השניים שקדמו לו, הוא שביר. הוא דליק, הוא לא מובן מאליו. היציבות שלו היא באחריותנו. הקיום שלו תלוי בנו. זאת המשמרת שלנו. תודה.
תודה רבה לחברת הכנסת תהילה.
Well, that was pretty amazing. I'm going to hand over now to Ted, and Ted, please have your discussion with Tehila.
Thank you. I think you have to make Tehila a co-host.
She's unmuted. She's ready to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I'm good.
But you need.
Wonderful.
But no, but she's got. You need to turn the camera on.
No, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, there are 2 Tehilas, but that's fine.
Oh,
2 is
okay.
better than 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay,
don't know why.
Tehila.
Yes.
Sorry, one is me. I'm Tehila's assistant.
Say again?
It's Noah. I'm Tehila's assistant. I'm here as well. I'm sorry.
Okay, שלום נועה.
Hi.
ברוכים הבאים למחוזותינו הווירטואלי. Welcome to our virtual precinct. And you should be glad that you're only with us virtually because, as we spoke before, we're in COVID lockdown, at least here in Melbourne. So although given the craziness of the past week in the Knesset, perhaps a stint of house arrest in Australia might be something you'd welcome. You know,
Yes.
when I was listening to your speech for the first time in Hebrew, I was originally puzzled by one segment. When you say that Israel didn't need a leadership of Kilerim, but you were hoping for a leadership of Hilerim. And there I was for a few moments wondering why you were calling for Hillary Clinton to take up residence at the Prime Minister's house on Balfour Street. Surely the caliber of political leadership in the Knesset can't be that bad, I thought. But then I understood and the light bulb went off. But on a more serious note, you began your speech by citing the famous story of Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was smuggled out of besieged Jerusalem in a coffin in order to preserve Judaism and the Jewish people. And of course, most of us are familiar with the Talmudic passage from Masechet Yoma that ascribes the destruction of our second temple to Sinat Chinam, to baseless hatred. And you talked about it during your first few weeks in the Knesset. You witnessed numerous examples of contempt and disdain being hurled by one side against the other. How serious do you think that Sinat Chinam is really in Israel today? And is it the province of one part of the social or political spectrum, or is everybody equally to blame?
It's a good question because when I'm watching the American society as an outsider, my impression is there are like two states, red state versus blue state. This is not the situation in Israel. It's not. You can find in my very own family, among my siblings, I think we voted for at least 3, maybe more different parties on a very broad spectrum. And we are very close to each other. The point I'm trying to make is that the Israeli society is less divided than the Israeli politics. Political system supposed to be a mirror of society, but our mirror is broken. It's not, the political system is working against society. It's not politicians, because of very narrow interest, are emphasizing differences, are using pains, things that happened in the history, gaps that we have, but they're using it to tear us apart because in nowadays that's what politicians are. That's what politics
that kind of brings me to my second question. Because
I don't think everyone are equal. I think the Prime Minister has a big responsibility for that. Mm-hmm. But he's not the only one. Okay, I think I think he's the first one that I hold responsible, just because he's a Prime Minister. He is the one who's supposed to be the leader. He's the one who's supposed to say, I want to represent people who voted for me as well as people who didn't. And I'm not the Prime Minister only of my supporters. I'm the Prime Minister of everybody. And he's not doing that at all. Okay. But also there are some of his, I don't want to say enemies, competitors.
Adversaries?
Yeah, okay, well, in many ways using, I don't know if same language, but they're using same tools as him. And it becomes like as if our political system is some kind of sport that we're watching people hitting each other. And we say, hey. And I don't think that's what political system is supposed to look like. I think the aim of political system is to find ways to live together
at a very, very diverse society. And Israel is a very diverse society, deep diversity. You know, many times we say, diversity is so beautiful, let's celebrate diversity. Because we think of, you know, I'll bring my falafel, you'll bring your gefilte fish, and we all live happily ever after. That's not the kind of diversity we're facing. We are facing in Israel and in many other Western countries, but I can talk about Israel. We live near, you know, side by side, communities and people who deeply believe in different values, who dreams the future differently, who reads the history differently, and many times those values are in big clash. So it's not, you know, let's celebrate diversity. Why can't we all love each other? No, that wasn't, and I'm not John Lennon, and I'm not trying to say, imagine all the people. That was not my purpose. My purpose was to say that in each and every group in Israel, it can be ultra-Orthodox, it can be Arabs, it can be modern Orthodox, it can be seculars, it can be Russian speakers, you know, I can go on like that. In each and every group, you have people who understand the challenge of shared society, and you have and are willing to take responsibility and to be arevim זה לזה, to be responsible for one another. And you have people who think that if they only try hard enough, they will win, and all the others somehow will be like them.
Well, that if I could just, that brings me to a really important question, because you're a proud Zionist and you believe in the righteousness of Jewish national self-determination in Eretz Yisrael. You spoke proudly of your father, who was a soldier in the famous 55th Paratrooper Brigade that liberated Jerusalem in 1967. And you also spoke of something, having something to learn from Israel's Arab sector. And this made me think of Fiddler on the Roof in his famous soliloquy of self-debate. But on the other hand, Tevye agrees to let his daughter Tzaitel marry Motel the tailor out of love. Then he agrees for his daughter Huddle to marry the dashing Jewish Marxist revolutionary Perchik. But when daughter Chava wants to marry the non-Jewish Fitka, Tevye declares, but there is no other hand. At the last election, Israel's Arab community sent 15 representatives to Knesset from the Joint List, a coalition of communists, pan-Arab nationalists, and Islamic factions. All of these Joint List MKs are explicitly anti-Zionist. All of them work to bring about the end of the miracle that you described so fondly in your speech. So my question is, how much is cooperation possible with the political demographic that keeps sending such people to represent them in the Knesset? Or to put it in Tevye's terms, what is your but there is no other hand point where it comes to dealing with a community that, judged by the people it keeps electing, identifies with Israel's enemies and is hostile to Jewish sovereignty over Eretz Yisrael?
I understand your point, but at the same time, they represent 20% of Israeli citizens. And most of the time, I see them at the Knesset. Most of the times they are busy with trying to betterness the social, the economical, the health condition of the people. Now, they are part of my story. I would love the Arabs to vote for another leadership. And by the way, I would love the ultra-Orthodox to vote for leadership, which includes women, for example, or which, you know, more Zionist, or I have a list. But they didn't vote for them. They voted for those people. So I have to work with what I have on places that I can cooperate. I can't cooperate whenever it comes to national questions, as you described. There is no other hand. But why can't I cooperate with helping in health, in economy, in, you know, there are many issues, many issues that we can find the common good. And that's a job we need to do, because I can decide I can say, okay, I'm working only with people who I agree with, you know, if not 100%, 80%. And I can say I'm working with whoever I have, but not on everything. I find fields, I find areas that I can cooperate on. Now, do I have red lines? Obviously, yes. But I'm less busy with red lines and I'm more busy in trying to find those places of common good. First. And second, I'm not sure. Well, that's not true. I'm 100% sure. I know that among the Arabs, there are many people who want to be part of the Israeli society. They don't define themselves Zionists. They will never do. And I understand that because they have their own national identity. And I understand why it's hard for them. But at the same time, they are looking for ways to become Israelis. And I feel it's my responsibility to help them find the ways for better integration in the Israeli society. So my answer is basically, first, they're here. I need to work with what I have. And I wish God would decide differently, but he didn't, she didn't. I'm joking. But and that's reality. And second, not everybody, those kind of Arabs and those kind of Arabs, and searching for places that we can promote common good. That's the point.
Okay. Just going back to the Knesset, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I just wrote a book. It's a kind of about Sayeret Matkal going back to 1940 and ambushing Hitler's train and forestalling the Shoah. So I'm tempted, after seeing what's been going on in Israel for the past year, to write another book in which I go back and I tell Ben Gurion, don't do it. Don't create a single House of Parliament that's based on proportional representation. So how much do you think of this vitriol and very fierce criticism is a function of the system, the fact that you have a unicameral parliament, one house that's based on proportional representation, you have all these little parties, there's never been a majority government in Israeli political history. So how much of it is, do you think, systemic? And do you think that the mess, the balagan of the past year, 3 elections, do you think that there is critical mass for electoral reform to change the system, like to regional elections instead of having a national list? You know, you'll be the, I don't know, the member of Knesset for Rosh Hashanah or whatever.
I think a lot of it is systemic. A lot of it. Something is broken in our system. It's not functioning anymore. I'm not sure if the regional system is the right one.
Something.
National. I'm not sure. I mean, you gave one example. I know it's not, you know, it doesn't have to be that. I'm very busy thinking about that also. What would be a better system? I'm not sure our main problem is, look, let's put it that way. I don't like the presidential system, that's a winner takes it all. You know, one half win and it takes everything. I think for a society like Israel, the systems that give representation to different groups is healthy, is good. The question is, how small should be those groups? Okay, maybe we can, you know, maybe it can be larger. Maybe part need to be regional, because then the Knesset members will be more connected, directly connected to the people who vote for them, for the voter. Look how different is a local government and the national government. Local government tend to be much more pragmatic, much more trying to work together and try to give a voice to all the people in the city, because local government is measured by how clean are the streets, how good are the schools. It's very like they
Tangible.
emphasize. It's very like life itself. No, not ideas, not they're trying to give better life to the people. As simple as that. And if the streets would be dirty, so the mayor wouldn't be elected again. As simple as that. While prime ministers, it's much harder to measure are they doing good job. There is a famous political scientist called Benjamin Berber. Google him. He wrote a famous book called If Mayor Rules the World. What would happen? He claimed that the biggest problem, the international problem, climate, things like that, can be solved better on level of mayors than on level of national states. It's very interesting. He has a very interesting TED video. And I think it's because national politicians tend to emphasize ideas and to emphasize differences in order to be elected. While mayors tend to emphasize solutions for problems, for real problems. And my feeling that, I don't know how to translate it into system, but I agree with you that something should be changed in our system.
And is there critical mass, political critical mass after the past year, 3 elections? Is there enough support to kind of push that over the line? Because everybody who's now in the Knesset, most everybody except maybe you, has a vested interest in the current system. Is there enough dissatisfaction to push it through?
The problem is not the satisfaction, but the place of many Israelis think that once be the prime minister, that the entire thing gonna change. Either if they're for him or against him, they think he's like the center of it all. Not sure that. But very. So many people think that. So like the entire Israel political system is anti-Bibi for Bibi. Everything is around it. And very hard to move like that. If everything is around one person, it's very hard to convince, that something needs to be changed in the system. And also I must say, I do agree that once we'll have another prime minister, we're going to see a big frischmish. I don't know how you say frischmish. I think it's in Yiddish. A big, how do you say? We'll see balagan. We'll see the Israeli system get organized differently. Just because he's prime minister now for more than 10 years. And he's so central. So I think it's gonna make a lot of shift. But it's true that it's time to think seriously of the system.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand over. I think Alan had one question before we go to the public at large.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
Thank
Ted.
you very much, Tehila.
Thanks, Tehila. Now we're going to open up the evening to questions from the audience. So now's the time to prepare a question. Don't forget to raise a hand. And I think we've already got somebody's hand up. So I'll hold back on my question. But Michael, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Tehila. Welcome to Australia. I know you're going to find this hard to answer because you're a politician and you have to deal with all sides of political parties in other countries. But the one thing that worries me the most is the American elections at the moment. Notwithstanding, Donald Trump has got a sort of an eccentric sort of personality. I mean, at least he's got a personality. The Democratic Party is obviously not Israel friendly, not Jewish friendly. It's probably the most anti-Israel political party in American history. We all know that. I don't have to go on about that. But how do you personally explain that the majority of diaspora Jews, well, in America, even here in Australia, support getting rid of Donald Trump after all he's done for the Jews and Israel?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask because I'm Israeli. But I'll tell you how I view that. First, there are people around Trump. Only today, I saw that one of the women who was supposed to give speech in the Republican, the big conference, they canceled her participation because she gave a very, very anti-Semitic statement, something about the protocol of the elderly of Zion, something like really crazy, about Jews controlling the world, we wish. And they so there are people around Trump who are clearly, you know, supportive of white supremacy, things like that. And I can understand why Jews in America are bothered from that. And also, I think the Jews has deep roots in the Democratic Party, Jews in America. Has to do with minority rights, has to do with immigration, policy, things like that. So I can understand why they're so involved in Democrats. And I also, many times we Israeli look at them and ask your question, how come, leave aside Trump, okay, but how come you supported so much Obama that was hostile toward us? It was a painful question for us Israeli. But one time I asked that and a friend told me, and how come so many Israelis support parties who are hostile to us? And I was like stunned. First, because many times we just interpret it differently, the word. And also because it's true that just like most Israelis votes because of local reasons, you know, normal local reasons, it's the same is true with America. So I guess Israel is taking part of Israel is, you know, one part of the things they consider when they come to elect, but they have many other considerations. So, and it's only fair. I'm also worried about elections in the United States. I don't know. My feeling is that John Biden is not at all anti-Israeli. I'm not sure about his vice president. The woman he chose as vice president, but I must be fair and say, I hold myself pretty, I don't know, I wouldn't say expert, but I'm very, very familiar with American jury. But I'm not as familiar with American politics. So I don't hold myself expert to that. So I'm trying to be.
As you said, Michael, she's a politician and she answered that very well according to her craft. Joseph, you've got your hand up, so please unmute yourself and ask your question.
My question revolves around Bibi. Bibi Netanyahu has been part of the Israeli miracle for the last 24 years. Why do you think it is that so many of the Israelis are against him at this particular time when it's necessary to have somebody with deep roots and a strong hand to be in power in Israel?
I think what we see now is how hard and also impossible it is to manage it, to be in court and at the same time to lead the country. Very hard to divide between your personal needs as someone who's convicted. I'm not sure. Convicted. Accused. And at the same time that you need to look, you know, on broad interest of the country. And we see the clash right now. Whenever the people of the Likud are attacking our legal system, it's very, very dangerous. So I think many people who are very worried about him continuing to be prime minister, it's because of that. It's because if someone is accused and need to manage a trial, it's almost impossible to be a prime minister at the same time. On the other hand, I'm part of his coalition. My feeling was that as we can't, as the Israeli society is divided on that specific question to half and a half, so it's pointless to go on again and again and again for elections on that question. And we need to find ways to work it out. That this is a situation. Let's do our best in it. Is it working well? It's hard. It's very, very hard. But I don't see other option right now.
Okay.
I try to be as sincere as I can, and I'm new to the field of politics, so I don't know if those are the right answers, but those are my answers.
No, you're doing very well. Thank you. Thanks, Joseph. Gary, you've got your hand up, and then we've got Leon.
Thanks for dropping in. It's good to be speaking with you. Being a moderate, political moderate in Israel is pretty extreme. And other extremists, all of the others, not just two, would probably say, why should we listen to you? You're the type of extremist that we have been trying for years, when all of the others say our extremism hasn't been tried yet.
First, I like the definition. To be moderate is pretty extreme. I agree. Let's put it that way. I'm not a relativist. It's not like I think, all values are the same, everyone are right. No. How I defined extremism in two definitions. First, whoever is not willing to have others around the table it can't be near the table. Okay, if your precondition for sitting near the table is not having the women or Arabs or whatever, so you can't be around the table. So I understand there is a paradox here, but that's one definition I'm putting there. And second is moderation for me is understanding that we're all going to stay here, nobody going to disappear, and finding ways to live together. That's a purpose. If you think that someone else is temporary, either because you think you are a liberal and you think one day all those firms will, open their eyes, see the lights, and become very liberal, or you think the opposite. You are from and you think one day those secular people will open their eyes, see God, and hallelujah. Or if you think that Arabs, one day will give up and just, move somewhere else outside of Israel. Or the other side, Arabs who think, those Jews are crusaders, as they came from Europe, so they'll go back to Europe. We just need to hold on tight. If you think that the others gonna disappear, that's for me make you extremist. Okay, so it's not so much the content of your views, is a position. Okay, if you understand you need to live with others, and find ways to do that, and if you're willing to have everybody around the table, that's my like conditions. I think they're pretty basic, I think. But people can think the opposite.
Okay. Now, Leon, your turn. Leon doesn't have a camera, Tehila, so he'll ask his question just by audio. So please go ahead, Leon.
Oh, good evening, Tehila. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right. As a law graduate, you are very qualified, I think, to answer my question, and it is this. Do you think that in the Israeli system, any of the three branches of government encroaches on any other branch?
I'm not sure I understand what's in crunches.
Well, do you think that one branch of government interferes?
You're talking about the checks and balances in Israel.
No guess, Bacherim.
Yes, 100%.
השגת גבולות בין
yes.
שלוש זרועות הממשל.
No. So I understood all the rest, just only that one word. Yes, 100%, but I don't think the problem is so much between the legal system and the Knesset. I think the most of the problem is between the Knesset and the government. The parliament of Israel is very, very weak, and the government is too strong. And so the checks and balances in those terms doesn't function. Why our parliament is very weak? First, because we're pretty small. As 180 Knesset members, out of them, around 30 are ministers, means part of the government, which leaves us with 86 or around 90 Knesset members. We are 9 million people. When Israel was established, we were something like 800,000 people, and we have the same number of parliament members. We're a small parliament. And so each one of us is running between, I myself, I'm a member of seven different committees, and it's very hard to be expert in anything. It's very hard to fulfill the mission of pikuach, to watch over, like one of the missions of the Knesset is to watch, לפקח, to supervise the government work, and it's very hard to do it. And also when everything is a coalition versus opposition, it doesn't give the Knesset members so much individual power to influence. So my feeling is that the Knesset need to be strengthened dramatically in order, because the Knesset is really who represents the people. The Knesset is the sovereignty is of the Knesset, and right now most of the power is in the hands of the government. Now, I guess you were trying to make the point of the legal system. I just don't think that's the case. I think many times when the government doesn't want to make decisions, they, drag legs, wait, and actually pushing the hard questions to the court and let the court decide, and then they can say, but if they were making the decision way before, sometimes it's 10 years. So there's a question now on conversion that waits in Supreme Court for now more than 15 years. The Supreme Court is begging the government to decide, to take a decision, and the government is not doing it. And it's happening again and again and again. And then they accuse the court to be, stucking his nose to things that are none of his business. So I think there's a dirty game here. It doesn't mean that I always agree with the court. I don't. And many times I think there were cases that they shouldn't get into. But if you look for the problem in checks and balances, it's mainly between the Knesset and the government.
Okay. We are coming up to time, and I did want to ask you one question, Tehila, and change the subject a little bit. The arrangement with the United Arab Emirates. Could you just give us your thoughts on that, and how you feel things will go as this moves forward? What are the thoughts of the Israeli people about that?
I think most Israelis are happy. what's not to be happy about
Well.
when we have a, you know, a peace agreement with important Arab countries. I think it also proves weakness, not only weakness, but the big mistake of the Palestinian leadership. They locked themselves in dead end, and it doesn't prove, for their interest, it doesn't prove itself. And I think it's great. I mean, it's great that maybe it will take them out of this dead end they locked themselves, and maybe not. I don't know. Hopefully, it will have economical impact. We do need now something to encourage our economy, which is not doing great. Yeah, I don't think I have something very sophisticated to say about it.
Okay.
You know, I think it's a great.
I think we would too. Most people in Australia, I think, would welcome the news. I guess the one angle was that it put on hold or cancelled, depending on how you look at it, the extension of Israeli law over Judea and Samaria. Where do you sit with that?
You know what? I'm not sure it would happen. I'm not sure it's because of this peace agreement with Emirates. I know that's what they say. I'm not sure this is the case. I think it has a lot more to do with Trump administration interests, different interests. No, I don't agree there is a direct connection. If I may, I saw on the chat someone mentioning the Malka Leifer issue.
Yes.
So I want to say a word about that. First, to say it's a shame. It's an Israeli shame, and it's at that point I think our court misbehaved. I think the foreign health minister Litzman did something awful. The only thing I can say is that you have many alliances in the Israeli society who are also very angry about that, who pushed very hard for the new decision. And I'm very, very, very glad that finally it's going to be solved. And I just want to, it's like it's not my responsibility, and yet I want to apologize as Israeli.
No, thank you.
I think it's just horrible.
Is this also part of this connection between the legal system and the political system, do you think? Are there politics in play here?
Yeah, but you see, politicians, it was the court hesitating to make decision and waiting for politicians to move, and they were not, or they were moving to the wrong direction. So yes, it has to do with relationship with political and legal system, but I think here is the main. I think, what can I say? It's just horrible. Just Litzman did something horrible. That's it.
Yeah, okay. Look, on that note, we have reached our time. I'll just hand over to David, and he can make a few closing remarks. Tehila, thank you from me. It seems as if you're starting a conversation on introducing some change into the Israeli political system, and I think that's a good thing. So well done on what you're doing. And David, would you like to just do some closing remarks?
Yes, certainly. Well, firstly, I want to thank Tehila very much for your time, but more importantly, for your refreshing directness, openness, honesty. We like people of principle. You can have a discussion with people of principle, and you've clearly got some important principles, which is very positive, and we welcome that sort of injection into Israeli political discussion.